video. We're recording and we're live. Wow. Hello. Okay, so for anybody who's watching this later on YouTube as a VOD, this was streamed on Twitch. I guess I'll have my Twitch in the description, I guess. So what we're doing today is, as you can see on your screen, I have two YouTube videos pulled up. Both of them are about DC in general, for like DC comics and DC heroes and like the movies and all that kind of stuff. I love comic book movies and superheroes. I love comics. I have a whole ass shelf on my bookshelf just dedicated to comic books, both Marvel and DC. I'm a huge comic book reader. I'm a huge comic book. So what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be watching and breaking down and reacting sort of to these videos. These videos have, so this one has 1,310,801 views, and then the problem with DC's superheroes or DC's heroes has 7 million views. I don't think I'm gonna get that many views, but just to be clear, I'm not sponsored. This is by Cosmonaut Variety Hour. I love his videos. I've watched a lot of his vids. Those are great. And so is the second one. Both of them are by him. He's great. Check his channel out. Check out, the original content. It's good. So what's going to happen is I'm just going to be watching these videos and breaking down some of the things he talks about. I have seen these videos before. First one is about Batman v Superman, and it's part of a series that he's doing where he's watching, quote, the worst superhero movies ever made. So we're going to watch these videos together. Both of them are fairly long, but I'm probably going to skip through a bunch of it because I don't need to care too much. So we're going to start out with Batman v Superman, the worst superhero movie ever made? Question mark. A good video. I've already seen it.
This video is sponsored by NordVPN. Welcome back, everybody, to the...
My video is not sponsored by NordVPN. Just to make sure everybody just heard him say what he just said. Yeah, hopefully. Are we good? Did everyone hear his audio from this? I think so, right?
Worst superhero movies ever made, a series where I help you ignore the decay of Western society.
God, it feels so loud in my ears. I don't know if it's super loud for you guys. If it's super loud, please. I heard it. Good. Hello, Wolf. How are you? So, yeah, if you missed it, we're watching these videos and we're breaking them down.
And today, the time has finally come. I am finally going to watch the movies I've been avoiding for over a year now. The movies that truly inspired this series. I think Batman v Superman is the movie that a lot of people think about when they think about bad DC movies, and I avoided watching it for a really long time.
I mean, I don't know about y'all, and I don't know about, like, what videos you guys have and haven't seen of DC's, but when I think of bad DC movies, I think of, like, Halle Berry's Catwoman. Like, that's pretty bad. I think of Batman and Robin. That's pretty bad. I don't really think of Batman v Superman as a bad movie by DC per se. The only things I really don't like about Batman v Superman is the dumb Martha twist. Like, it makes sense, but also it's so dumb. And probably some other things that I'll get to later that I can't think of at this given second. But yeah. You liked Catwoman? See, I didn't hate Catwoman. I just didn't think it was good. Like one of those it's so bad it's good things. Anyway.
So yes, that is the subject of this video. But first, I think it's only fair that we talk about the movie that came before it. So let's start by talking about Man of Sponsorships. That's right, I tricked.
This is just fucking advertisement for NordVPN, which I think is the actual VPN thing that I actually use Pretty sure.
For those Black Friday savings.
This was December 1st, 2020. So there's nothing
I would like
you
to
can
thank
use anymore.
NordVPN for sponsoring this video. Okay,
They
let's talk about Superman
they
now.
didn't sponsor. Also, he's going to reference in a minute or two here. He's going to reference the other video up here that we're going to watch. Um, we'll watch that one after this. But he's gonna like give the cold notes versions of that in this video, anyways. But despite saying that he doesn't want to do that, and then he does it anyway.
Man of Steel is a weird movie. I'm gonna be real with you guys. I don't even think Man of Steel is that bad. It's not good, but compared to the shit that comes after it, it's at least semi-watchable. But
so I'll admit to everybody here, Man of Steel is probably of the three Zack Snyder DC films. Man of Steel is probably the one I've seen the least. Um, but I don't hate it by any means. I'm just not a fan of Superman because I don't like Superman as a character and how he's made because he's insanely overpowered. Like if you've ever watched like the death battle between him and Goku and the rematch, the problem with putting anybody against Superman is that Superman is literally built as the first superhero and he's overpowered on purpose. So like it's not a good thing. So like that's why. Also, I've only seen Joss Whedon's Justice League, which I don't count as a Snyder movie, but like I guess is also in that count. I've only seen that a handful of times too, to be fair. But that's beside the point.
But the biggest problem with this movie is that it feels wrong. It shows a fundamental misunderstanding of the Superman mythos, a character that has been a part of pop culture for a freaking long time, okay? I think the amount of people who actually get Superman is relatively small, and I've talked about this in my DC Superheroes videos, so if you haven't seen that, go watch that, because I don't want to repeat everything. I got shit to do. You've seen the length of this video. It's already long enough. Now, I've been saying this for years and years, but Superman isn't as lame as everybody thinks he is. But movies have always portrayed him in one of two ways: as a boring goody two-shoes Boy Scout narc, or as an emotionless alien demigod that's masquerading as a human without acting like one.
The problem with that train of logic is that that's exactly how the comics portray him a lot of times too. The only good interpretations or good things that I've seen Superman in are some of the more not about Superman based media. So if you've seen like the DC animated films, um, the only good DC animated films that have Superman in them that I've actually seen are the Justice League ones. Most of those are pretty good, but that's because they're not about Superman. And the only good one that is about Superman is Superman versus the Elite, and that's because it takes on the topic of vigilantism. I think is technically I'm saying that word wrong, but it's like the idea of is killing a killer correct or not. Now we're not going to get into that debate because that's not what this video or this stream is about. But this is those are like the only ones that I've seen that are really good. Otherwise, it's basically just Superman doing what Superman does in Man of Steel, where like he's facing, and in Batman v Superman, yes, um, and just where he basically is just like he's the heavy hitter that goes up against big time threats because Superman is, again, as we've said like 100 times already, Superman's overpowered as fuck. So like it's hard to have Superman do other things. Superman is insanely intelligent and is insanely like interesting when you think about him from that standpoint. And I think that's why the best stories that relate to Superman are either not about Superman or have nothing to do with trying to take him down via being like trying to use, kryptonite against him or trying to use, some form of magic against him. Like not trying to use one of those weaknesses, but it's the same thing that we're gonna touch on a little bit later with Batman. Um, it's about attacking not only Superman but just the quote heroes' integrity and their belief systems. I think that is what makes characters super interesting. Now, within Zack Snyder's trilogy of films, Man of Steel, BVS, and Justice League, when his cut comes out in about a month's time, give or take, it comes out on the 18th, but this month, pretty close. When you take into consideration like all of his films, and you're looking at Superman, the reason Superman seems really unrelatable is because of the fact that Superman is depicted as kind of out of touch with humanity, especially in Batman v Superman, because that's the entire point is that Lex Luthor is trying to alienate an alien from humans and trying to make the humans alienate Superman as well, so that way the conflict will actually work and make sense, and it does. Is it inherently good then? No, but that is why he's depicted that way, especially in that film. In Man of Steel, he's actually one of the more like human elements to that. Not necessarily compared to other humans, but like literally in Batman v Superman, Batman says that the reason he needs to bring, or no, that was Justice League, sorry. The reason he needs to bring back Superman is because Superman is more human than Batman is. He's more human than Bruce Wayne because Superman grew up, like when he came to Earth, he landed on a farm ran by poor people, and like all of the things that you know about Superman from Man of Steel, and every time he talks with his dad, they're all talking about memories about living on a farm and like having to, you know, scrounge around and like, you know, they're doing dirty work and things like that. And even in shows like Smallville and stuff that were about Superman, you see a lot of the stuff about and the things that really bring Superman down to earth and really humanize him are memories and thoughts about his farm life and living as a real human. He had a normal person job. You know, he had in other forms, not really in Snyder's, but in other media of Superman. Clark Kent gets picked on because he, you know, purposely dresses like a nerd, even though he's like a beefcake, and it's really weird. But like, he gets picked on all the time, and that's one of the most humanizing aspects of Superman. But if you took the farm life and him getting bullied by other human beings out of Superman's characterization, Superman would literally just be a demigod alien that is completely like unrelatable. Again, he's just overpowered.
And that second one has been popularized by these movies. And that's because of the director of these movies. See, Zack Snyder says he likes comics, but to me, he's always seemed like the frat bro who reads Watchmen and says, "Bro, you gotta read this. It's not like other comics. It's got sex in it." But let's start by doing something that I don't usually do. I'm going to compliment him now. 300 is a pretty cool movie. I'm not afraid to say that. I've said it before plenty of times.
300 is a pretty good
doesn't
movie.
completely ruin the source
300
material.
is pretty
It's
good.
just a comic about people.
Right now, so it's time to make fun.
This is more.
So he goes back into now quoting and talking about there, I don't remember what interview, but apparently it was for BVS. Snyder was talking about how, and lots of people have quoted this and talked about it. Snyder talked about how like in a lot of other in a lot of comics and a lot of mediums, there aren't as many like it's not super grotesquely over the top violent. Snyder's will end up being, and it's not you know, it's not afraid, you know, most especially superhero films and comics just aren't really pushing boundaries like they used to. But he's not saying it like that. He's saying it in a stupid way that he's about to show, and he's basically saying that like, oh, Batman's cool and everything because he went to Tibetan monastery and got trained by, you know, the League of Shadows and like all these ninjas and stuff. And then he says something to the effect of Batman could get raped in his movie, and it's like, dear Lord, Zach, you need to not.
For my scene.
I don't know, to me it doesn't sound like he actually gets it. So let's take the guy who doesn't understand Watchmen and give him the rights to make Batman and Superman movies. I'm sure he'll do a great job.
Also, he was just talking about Watchmen, which Snyder also did that movie as well. And he's talking about how Watchmen is about trying to like poke fun or satirize like gratuitous violence, and then the Watchmen film is very violent, almost gratuitously. Honestly, that's just kind of Snyder's thing. He likes making things really, really violent. And when it comes to like Watchmen was rated R, so he could get away with it. I'm pretty sure 300 was also rated R. And then when he got Batman and he got Superman, obviously these are supposed to be like kind of child friendly. So he probably only had like a PG-13 rating at the worst. So he can't do like super overt like blood and guts and violence. But he just still made it like really dark and grim on purpose, you know. Um, but yeah, I don't know. I've read the Watchmen comics. I've seen the Watchmen film. I liked the Watchmen film, but there was a lot that was missing and a lot that was not done correctly, in my opinion. But it's not that it was a bad movie by any means. It was still pretty good.
Job.
I'm like, okay, no.
Yes,
Batman's
here's the
cool.
quote.
He
Here's
gets
the
to go to
quote.
a Tibetan monastery and be trained by ninjas. Okay? I want to do that. But he doesn't, like, get wrecked in prison. That could happen in my movie.
Zack Snyder's not interested in making faithful comic book adaptations. He wants to make edgy fan fiction.
Okay, so that's like more or less just a dig at Zack Snyder more than anything. But literally almost none of the films that have come out that are superhero films have actually been any kind of adaptations of actual comics, like pretty much at all, including the best ones. Like, think about this: the best comic book films that you can think of are probably your top threes are usually going to have at least one of these three that I'm about to name: Logan, The Dark Knight, or Joker. You're probably going to name at least one of those in your top three, if not top five, right? The Dark Knight has a lot of different bases of like different Batman comics that inspired Heath Ledger and Christopher Nolan and Christian Bale to do the things that they did, and they kind of touch on some of those things. But it's one of the most completely unfaithful to any one or even a couple different comics. Like Heath Ledger's Joker is not like any Joker in literally any medium aside from comics that would come later and reference Heath Ledger's Joker. Like when Batman in the comics sits on that fucking, I think it's the Mobius chair, and it reveals to him Joker's identity is actually there's three Jokers. I think in one of the pictures it shows Heath Ledger's Joker. But aside from that, there is literally nothing in anywhere um like any mediums that show the Joker the same way that Heath has the Joker. Literally at all. In Logan, Logan is about as close as we to an old man Logan, or like Wolverine um story. Like that one's kind of close in the bare premise of that Wolverine is old. Aside from that, there's not a lot that's actually faithful to the Old Man Logan comics, because in the Old Man Logan comics, Logan or Wolverine is a pacifist. He doesn't go around murdering everybody. And then what does Logan do in Logan? He just murders everybody. Like at first he's like, I just don't want to deal with this shit, but then he gets pulled into it anyway. So like, and I think it was also because like this isn't to diss James Mangold because Logan is also one of my favorites. But I think Mangold knew this, and it was like, there's no way that you're going to be able to make and sell a Wolverine based film, let alone any type of superhero film, in which you can do a full on film that doesn't have at least at some point, a lot of violence, because there's no amount of, like, even Joker, right? Joker had like no real amount of violence within maybe, you know, 75% of its runtime was pretty non-violent specifically, and then it just like within like that last, I want to say just barely past the halfway mark, it just goes fucking downhill and it's just violent like all the time. So it's pretty cool with in that respect. But like again, Joker and Wolverine and Logan, they're not really faithful to any particular comic or like set of comics that you can actually point to and be like, well, they did these specific things, they did this, they did this, they did this. You can take certain aspects sometimes, like again, the premise of Logan was Old Man Logan and Old Man Wolverine, but that's about where the comparisons stopped. The Dark Knight, you got a couple of sort of illusions and thought processes and concepts that were similar to comics like uh, Batman Arkham Asylum, A Serious House on Serious Earth. That one's a great comic that lots of people love. I own that comic. You got certain aspects of that in The Dark Knight that were like similar, but they're not really close enough where you're like, ah, yes. Especially to those that are what we would, I guess, call the uninitiated, right? And then in Joker from 2019, the only one that you can really draw any specific parallel to would be the Killing Joke. But here's the problem with that, and I'm this weird person. Like I'm gonna tell you something here, chat, and this might surprise some of you, except for the people who've actually seen me in person and seen this. I have a Joker tattoo, and I'm a super big Joker fanboy. Like I've read a lot of Joker stuff. I've consumed a lot of Joker media. I don't think Joker's a good person. I don't think any relationship should be based on Joker and Harley Quinn because they're both toxic to each other. Joker's not the only abusive one in that relationship though, and that's the difference. Is I'm intelligent enough to know that Harley Quinn is just as abusive and just as shitty. Don't at me. But point is, I hate with a capital fucking H the Killing Joke comic. I've read it. I owned it. I own the film too, the animated film. I hate all of them. Like I love Mark Hamill as Joker. He's my favorite one. I like Kevin Conroy as the Batman. He's my favorite one. And I thought that that film was well voice acted and well animated, and that the story in itself is an interesting story. But I hate it for the main reasons of 90% of like whether or not it's the internet or people who consume comic related media, whether it's just the films or the actual comics, most people know the Killing Joke story because it was a story that I'm pretty sure from my memory won lots of awards and did all these cool things, right? I know we're on a weird tangent, but like there's a point to it. But like the Killing Joke is a bad comic because of the fact that everybody took it as this is for fact the Joker's origin story. But if you read the fucking comic, the Joker himself, if you read the comic or you watch the animated film, because the animated film basically has the same script, the Joker literally says that he isn't even sure if the events that you see within that film slash comic are true. He says if he wants to have a past, he wants it to be multiple fucking choice. And there's this really wild thing in comics called canon. The Killing Joke is not a canon story. Fuck. It never has been, and I'm pretty sure I think they might have actually changed that recently-ish to be like, oh no, it is, because again of that Mobius chair thing, to be like, oh, it is canon, sort of, because it's one of many possibilities, but that's the point. Joker doesn't have an origin, and that was the good thing about the Joker film, is that they made it so that way you were questioning everything that you saw in that film, and that's good. But Like, the best comic book movies aren't comic adaptations. Even comics that are literally named after, or even films that are named after actual comics, aren't very good adaptations. Look at Captain America Civil War. Captain America Civil War is nothing like the Civil War comic books. Civil War comic books are way better. Like, astronomically better. So good. And by the way, Civil War is one of my favorite not just Captain America, one of my favorite Marvel films, but not the point here. But let's carry on. The point is to say that Zack Snyder, sure, might be making, in your mind, like grotesque fanfic and like over the top edgelord fanfic. But guess what? He's the one who was given the reins to make the cinematic movies. And whether or not you like it or not, his fanfic is now what people are going to consume. Like, technically, The Killing Joke was fanfic made by Alan Moore. And guess what? Everyone and their fucking dog thinks that it's the fucking origin story of the Joker because they're fucking don't know how canon works and don't know that like, even I'm pretty sure Alan Moore has even come out and said that he doesn't even like that story. Like, that's how bad that story is, okay? Let's
I
carry
don't
on.
think Zack Snyder likes Superman. So
Nobody
I think
likes
he made
Superman.
these movies to make the kind of Superman that he would want. So instead, you get these movies with a bad Superman, and then eventually, you get a bad Batman. And all across these three movies, these characters never improve in any way. And I understand that most of this video so far has been me complaining about Snyder more than actually talking about Man of Steel, but this stuff is really important when we're talking about this series. Because as I've said in this video already, and in other videos before, the biggest problem with these movies is that he doesn't understand characters. You can make a movie that has a boring-ass story, but if you make the main character relatable and interesting...
How are you talking about Black Panther, man? Black Panther's story isn't the greatest in the world, but it's not bad, and Killmonger's one of the only good Marvel villains that has ever been actually put on screen. Like, one of the only good cinematic villains, and he's one of the only ones that people like, and the reason they like him is the same reason they like DC films. And we're gonna get to that in a little bit. Like, pretty soon, actually. Also, Black Panther sucks. Like, it's not a good movie. Like, it's not a bad story, but T'Challa is more relatable in Civil War. Like, the Black Panther character and T'Challa is way cooler in Civil War than he is in his own movie. In his own movie, he's boring as fuck. He's gonna talk about later how Marvel's stories and stuff, or like their films, are carried by their charismatic leads and like their charismatic heroes. I don't know if it's just me, but I don't think T'Challa was a good charismatic hero. I thought he was really boring, and that the other characters were way more charismatic and funny and quippy and carrying on.
still make money, and people will still...
All of these all of the DC EU movies still made lots of money, regardless of how you look at them. They still made lots of money, anyways. So that's a weird mute argument.
to watch it. Marvel has been doing this for years now. Most of these movies are not very ambitious as far as story is concerned. They are simply carried by their charismatic characters. And in Man of Steel, we have Henry Cavill as Superman, who is not exactly the most charismatic person.
This is weird. Hang on, you guys are gonna see this. Good. I don't remember, when did this come out? This came out in 2019, and Marcus, aka Cosmonaut Variety Hour, he made this video in 2020. So he should know that Henry Cavill is very charismatic and very funny. Because by the time that Justice League came out, he also was doing Mission Impossible, which is why we got that really shitty CGI mustache removal thing that cost a lot of money for no reason. Not the point. Like, Henry Cavill is super charismatic, super funny, super adorable. We stand Henry Cavill. We love Henry Cavill.
Don't play games with me, General.
Ooh boy. And yeah, you can tell that it's mostly due to how he's written and directed.
Ragnarok is way better.
But to get into that, we actually have to watch the movie now.
Ragnarok is
Now,
one of
I'm
the
not
best
gonna do a full
films from
breakdown of this
Marvel.
movie because it's not the shit show that Batman v Superman is. It's not one of the worst superhero movies ever made. So I'm just gonna try to break down the general idea of why this movie doesn't work for me, and then we'll go to the next one. To start with the positives, I think Zod works decently well as a compelling main villain. He's around from the very beginning.
If you're seeing like random like on stream or on recording that the videos that we're watching is cutting out, it's because that's me trying to go and read chat, so I think I'm gonna have to do a chat on my but that's beside the point. Zod is really good in this film. In other Superman films, he was not as good.
Of the movie, so we understand who he is and what he's doing pretty early on. And honestly, I think he works as this overzealous lunatic. And I really like how he reacts to finding out that he has superpowers when he's on Earth. He takes the opposite approach to Superman, and he's like, oh, so I'm basically a god, I'm just gonna rule the planet now. I think
yeah, he does do that. One thing I definitely didn't like about how that worked was that Zod and his people like adjusted or like were able to do what Superman did. Like they obviously weren't perfect and as honed in as Superman is by the point that they interact, but like they were able to hone in and be able to focus and do all of their like utilizing of like the Superman Kryptonian type powers so fucking fast, and it doesn't make sense. Like it took Superman his entire life to do that, and then these guys just came in, they just fucking did it. 5 minutes.
it's pretty fun. I have no problem with that. And you know,
That's pretty cool.
sometimes I just like when a villain is hammy and evil. And yes, it's cool to get a villain that you kind of agree with, but it's also fun to see a villain who's totally 100% wrong, but it's also believable in how insane they are. And I mean it, he's actually insane.
Yeah, he's so good.
Also, Michael Shannon is the only actor in this movie who seems to be trying even a little bit. He's the only person here showing a shred of emotion, so I'm gonna have to appreciate that, even if that emotion...
I don't agree. I also don't have like the package of Man of Steel like in front of me to be like, see, here's somebody showing emotion. I don't care enough to argue about that. That's just like your opinion, man. That's all I got.
Insanity.
Insanity is not an emotion.
And the scene of Superman flying for the first time is kinda cool. Snyder's really good at montage scenes like this. Any scene where the main character isn't talking has like a 10% chance of being decent. We're gonna see...
You realize that Zack Snyder isn't the person that does the script and writing. He's just the director. Like unless I'm wrong and the credits literally say written and directed by Zack Snyder, I'm pretty sure he's not responsible for like, you know, the dialogue being bad. Pretty sure that's not how that works.
Something like that later too. However, when you actually think about this scene for more than 10 seconds, it falls apart. We'll get to that later. As for the things in this movie that I don't like, we have basically every other thing in the movie. To start, I hate the way Zack Snyder directs some of these scenes. Every single scene has shaky cam, and it's pretty disorienting. Even just a scene of two characters having a normal conversation is going to have shaky cam. The actors also employ other...
Okay, so this is where we're going to talk a little bit about the Dark Knight. So, the shaky cam thing, as far like I don't know this because I don't know Zack Snyder and I haven't seen any interviews where he talks about this, but I would assume that that's actually an intentional decision. Now, the reason I think that's an intentional decision is the shaky cam and the seeming like it's a human doing like zooms with like a phone or like a camera that isn't on a tripod, different things like that, I think are part of the same thing that happens like in the Dark Knight. So in the Dark Knight, there's the scene where Commissioner Gordon and Harvey Dent are talking, and this is as Lau goes to China, and Batman is also there for this conversation, and Christopher Nolan does this thing where everybody fucking throws up their lunch because Christopher Nolan does like 300 fucking laps around the three of them, like they go in a circle around the three of them, and they're sort of standing in the camera circle, and they go around, and that is a cinematography, I guess that's the right thing to do or say it is. It's a cinematic trick to try and show the turmoil or the twister of confusion and chaos. Same thing is going on with the shaky cam. And compare that shaky cam to like the fucking uh those films where that is the entire premise, like the Chernobyl Diaries. Is that the right one? Like those types of films where they're like the horror movies that kind of suck because they're the shaky cam, and it's like one of the actors is the camera person, so you get like these weird, like you're seeing people running kind of things, like it's a first person perspective from the character who's shooting the film. That is weird. These shaky cams, I think, are a lot more intentional to try and do exactly what I was just saying, where it's just like show the chaoticness and get the viewer and the audience to feel like shit's going crazy, and that if it's a dialogue scene, right, and there's nothing really chaotic going on, because like he was just showing Superman's dad talking with the council on Krypton, it's to show again the turmoil and the craziness and give you a sense of not necessarily dread, but like the clock is ticking, so it's making you panic and making you kind of uneasy on purpose. Like you said that it's disorienting. That's the point. It's to make you feel all over the place on purpose.
Other
I think
handheld
anyway.
camera techniques, and it's never motivated by anything other than the fact that it looks cool. Why?
See, but like here's the thing. I'm somebody who enjoys films, for example, like Blade Runner 2049 or just Blade Runner, where there's a lot of shit like where scenes are just scenes of you're literally watching as, for example, like Deckard or Ryan Gosling's Kay come into the city, and it's a super long take that is realistically a ship flying over a green screen of CGI. And why is it there? Because it looks cool. It does world building. It does uh, cinematography really well. It gives you an idea scope, how big everything is, and how crazy everything is. In Blade Runner and in cyberpunk type worlds, it works really well to show you just how fucking massive the world is and how chaotic the the technology taking over has become. And in these films, it's to show again the scale of the world or the scale of everything that's happening, and to show the like when the Kryptonian ships are crashing into Earth, I would expect the camera to shake. Why? Because that would cause a massive shock to the Earth's surface, and it would cause probably mild earthquakes. Like not necessarily full on like building shattering unless you're really close by, but like you get what I mean.
Does this scene in an outer space battle look like it was shot by a human on Earth without a tripod?
Um, Again, to show the scale and to show how chaotic and crazy everything is. That is why. If you're gonna be like, oh, well, it looks like it's shot by a human, and this is supposed to be on an alien planet, bitch. These quote aliens look like fucking humans. I don't really give a shit.
I don't know, bro. It looks cool. Shut up. I hate that he does this hand cam quick zoom for everything. He uses
It's to show scale and make things like you know, the further away you are from something, the more likely it is that you're going to think, like, if you're far away from something and something happens, you're going to think, oh, that's really tiny. But if you're right next to it, or you have like a closer, like, angle, like if you can see it from below it or something like that, or closer to it, you're going to realize it's fucking massive. For example, if you see an explosion happen, it's going to hurt, it's going to suck way more, and you're going to be a lot more panicked about it if you're close by, as opposed to if you see an explosion happen completely nowhere near you. Right? Right. Carry on.
so much in this movie. Stop using it in every scene.
Extreme close up! Wow!
I think the designs in this movie are
I do
some
like
of the
that
worst
meme.
I've ever seen. Like, Superman's suit looks like shit, and I hate
You don't really explain why you think it looks like shit. I've already seen this, but this Superman suit is the best looking Superman suit that we've seen in a live action interpretation of Superman literally ever. So like it's unfortunate. I don't really like the suit like a lot, but I think that it's actually not bad and it makes sense in general. I'd much rather this to literally every other Superman fucking costume that we've seen in live action. Literally ever. Ever.
hate how it's this dumb.
Aside from hopefully when we get the black and gray, like silvery one that we're getting in the Snyder cut. Like, what is wrong with this? This looks cool. Like it doesn't look like insanely awesome, like, oh my god, like, you know, like it's great and like this is super great armor, but like Superman doesn't need armor, so like I don't really care. He doesn't need armor. His skin is literally bulletproof. The suit is there so you don't see his dick. That's basically it.
Futuristic alien mesh. And that's not the only thing that's ugly. All of the alien technology suffers from Michael Bay's Transformers syndrome, where it just kind of looks like a mess of gray metal. There are also some other questionable designs.
These penis ships, I absolutely agree. Those are dumb as fuck. As for like the Michael Bay like gray metal stuff, I think that's generally done in films, because like it's to try and be like, I think most people or most humans assume like the most cutting edge of technology that humans have discovered or like are about to get to is like the whole like really small nanite or like nano fucking little robot things like the ones in fucking Big Hero 6, like the tiny ones that can like shape into anything and do anything, but they're like incredibly strong. That kind of shit. I don't know. I don't really care too much about that kind of stuff. That seems really nitpicky. IMO opinion.
That's a penis.
Oh, and also, the
Yes.
movie itself is kind of boring because it's too long. The opening scene is a good example of things.
I don't know that it's too long. I think it's boring because it's a Superman story, and Superman's kind of boring. Like it's really weird because he's like, I don't think Superman is as boring as everyone thinks, and then he's like, the Superman movie is really boring.
Things being too long for no reason. I don't need to see Superman's dad flying around on a dinosaur and doing karate. I know the planet's gonna blow up. Let's just speed it up.
Yeah, but I feel like if you didn't show at least some form of context behind things happening on Krypton and things like that, you would have, yeah, the microbots, exactly. Um, I feel like if you didn't have some form of context about stuff that happened on Krypton, people would have complained that Man of Steel wasn't friendly to newcomers to these, and it would be like playing up to the expectation that people watching this film have to know stuff about Superman, which I mean, like most people probably did and do because Superman's super popular, been around since the 30s. Um, but that still doesn't negate the fact that I think that it was important, and I guess it also gives you some form of character development for Superman and also motivation for him to give a flying fuck about the Kryptonian ship later on in that film and why the fuck he actually even gives a shit. So like I think it was fair. Is it unnecessary? Maybe, but like I think it's useful.
The movie is also 2.5 hours long, and if you look at the plot, it's kind of hard to understand where they're filling this time up. Because it's not a complicated story. Superman lands on Earth, he grows up, he finds out who his family is, immediately after Zod shows up, and he fights him for an hour. The last third of this movie is just
Well, there you go. It's because to properly tell the narrative that you just told, an hour and a half seems about right. And then the hour long fight between Superman and Zod is where the rest of that time went. Honestly, I don't really have much to say about that because it's like, well, then you just cut it shorter. But also, you don't want to like underdo your fight, right? You don't want to build up your villain and then have the fight be over in like 2 seconds because then that really boring unless you're trying to like Like, haha, we subverted your expectations, but then it's like it gets old.
Blind mass destruction and violence. It's basically a 60-minute long Dragon Ball fight. Not like this.
I don't watch Dragon Ball, but I feel like that's how like literally anything that involves superhumans goes. Anything that involves a superhuman, especially superhumans that have like enhanced strength and durability and flying and shit like that. That's how like all of them go. Like watch any of the animated films for any superhero, and that's literally what happens is they go flying through 1,000 buildings. Also, it's to help like the synergy between Snyder's films are actually really good because this helps build up that anger and that fury and that passion and that fire that builds into Batman v Superman and like not anal related but like upset about the events of Batman v whole fight because they basically almost more or less level downtown Gotham, which is a weird note, and I do want to say this now. I think Snyder's decision to have Metropolis and Gotham be like right next to each other and have nothing but like a bay separating them is fucked, but I don't like I'll digress from that. I don't really care enough.
Movie even has the cool action directing that Snyder is known for. Literally just characters climbing into an entire hour. After a while,
Yeah.
you just become desensitized to it. My eyes just glaze over as it.
Yeah, but again, that's 90% of not even just superhero films, but films and series and anything that involve some form of superhuman entity that have enhanced this and that. Like it's always seeing like throwing people through buildings or throwing them through walls or throwing them through glass. Even John Wick, for example, which is super hyper realistic, had John Wick getting thrown through like shitloads of glass numerous times for no apparent reason.
Keep going, and it keeps drawing out, and I care less and less. And the destruction in this film is borderline apocalyptic. This is the fucking end of the world. Superman is blowing through Metropolis without any regard for civilian casualties. And to top it off, it ends with Superman murdering Zod, which is just so very wrong. I've already clowned on this scene before, so I'm not gonna repeat myself too much. If you're strong enough to snap his fucking neck and leave a shockwave afterwards, then why don't you just aim his face somewhere else? You didn't even try! But the reason this
I don't care enough. Like, I think that's a weird difference or differentiation between DC and Marvel as well. Is that DC characters are always assumed to be like they don't kill. And in the Dark Knight's case, right? Like in not just Batman. I'm not talking Batman. I'm talking in Christopher Nolan's Dark Knight trilogy. Yes, he dead ass just says, "No guns, we don't kill people." And all that. Cool, fine, whatever. Superman is all about truth, justice, and the American way. Cool, fine, whatever. But like that's the other thing is that DC's characters are a lot more like they actually bring up a conversation. They actually like think about it and talk about it. If you go and watch Marvel movies, Marvel quote heroes murder people all the fucking time and they don't give a shit. At least like the DC heroes have some form of a conscience and talk about it at minimum. But like dead ass Captain America, like in Winter Soldier, when he kicks that dude directly off the ship at the beginning, like and that dude hits the side of the ship before falling into the ocean, that dude's dead. Cap just like fucking Sparta kicked that dude into the side of the ship, broke his spine, and then the dude like flopped over the side of the ship like a fucking pancake, okay? Like a big flappy pancake. That dude is dead, okay? Literally most of Marvel's characters just murder people and they don't really give a shit. And don't even say like, oh, Iron Man gave shit. That's why he had PTSD in Iron Man 3. No, he had PTSD from the aliens coming and from the existential crisis that gave him that he is not special as a human being. That is why he had PTSD. Go watch the film again.
Sucks starts at the fundamental
To the Avengers and Assassins. Exactly. Exactly. Marvel characters don't give a fuck. They just murder people whenever the fuck they feel like it. They suck.
understanding of Superman as a character. The number one job of a superhero movie is to make us like the main character.
Okay. This is where we get into a discussion that is a lot heavier, and I might not even have to watch the rest of this video, or I might just like rant on about this, and it might just get my whole point across, and talking about Marvel versus DC. So, and Anna, who is in the Twitch chat as Open Heart Army, will also attest that we've kind of discussed this before as well. The differentiation between DC, not just in films, but in general, but also in the film, and Marvel, is that, as I was kind of touching on before, Marvel is about making their characters quippy and relatable and doing exactly what you're saying. They're trying to make their characters lovable, and you can quote them all the time, and yay, Marvel! Family friendly, all that kind of stuff. Yeah, exactly, Open Heart. Deadpool is a lot more realistic because of the fact that Deadpool's like, he makes a joke out of the fact of how many people he murders. But here's the thing. So Marvel is all about making their characters funny, quippy, and cool and relatable, and like, yeah, we can relate to these characters because they're just like me. The idea behind Peter Parker and aka Spider-Man is that could have happened to anybody, and like that's all these things, right? And like the Hulk and all these other things, these are representations of like, this could have happened to anybody. DC doesn't care. They don't want to do that. They never tried to do that, and they don't want to do that. That isn't what their goal is. That's never been their goal in the comics, in the films, in anything. So put it this way. Again, I'll go back to the best comic book films that you can think of from any of the like comic book filmmakers. The films that are really, really good aren't about character most of the time. The only exception to that is Logan. And the reason that we cared so much about Logan and about Professor Xavier is because we watched Hugh Jackman and Patrick Stewart be those roles since a lot of us were kids. Like the first X-Men movie, I'm pretty sure came out in 2000, right? X-Men came out in 2000. I was 2 years old when that film came. So we watched the two of them from 2000 all the way until Logan came out, which I believe was Logan 2017. We watched them for 17 years. I was 2. I watched these guys play those roles from age 2 to age 19, almost 20. So we watched them for like throughout all of these years, and especially like our formative years. We grew up with these characters, and we saw them in good films and we saw them in bad films, but we watched them, we loved them, they were great, they had a great relationship, and that film was just expertly done. But that isn't even the only things that we like about Logan. We liked Logan because, like, again, cinematography, it was beautifully shot, it was well acted, it was really well done. Were because the characters had a great relationship. But that's like that's the exception. That's not the example. The best films that you can think of, most people in the superhero genre, most people are gonna say The Dark Knight's in their top 3 usually, or top 5. Joker is usually within their top as well. Logan is usually in the top. Lots of people talk about Captain America: Civil War or Captain America: The Winter Soldier. Those films, like again, except for Logan, aren't about the character. They're about discussions. They're about topics. They're about things that have nothing specifically to do with the character, and these characters are only there and involved to make us that way people will actually want to watch the fucking film in the first place. That's literally almost a direct quote from Todd Phillips talking about Joker before it came out. Joker isn't about the Joker. Joker is a character study about mental illness in the form of Arthur Fleck, and he utilized the Joker character that we've loved for like 75 years as a medium and as a vehicle to make you and me and everyone else want to actually go and see this fucking film that's talking about mental illness in a time in which that was exactly what we needed and we could still use. And like The Dark Knight, for example, right? You take Batman and the Joker and all of the DC elements out of The Dark Knight, and you put in literally any miscellaneous character or nameless characters, you can still have a great fucking film. And the reason is because Batman isn't playing, it's not about Batman. It's not about the Joker. It's about the ideas and the processes and the premise and the ideations they represent and exude. The Joker is anarchy and chaos and, you know, fuck the system and fuck your established order. And Batman in the Dark Knight trilogy, like even the entirety of the Dark Knight trilogy, isn't about Batman. It's about things like escalation, the effects of lies, things like that. That is what the Dark Knight trilogy is about. Nolan's trilogy has nothing to do with Batman. You could have made the exact same films about literally any character that wasn't Marvel or DC. The only reason that you wanted to go and see it was because it was Batman, though. And because it was well acted, it was well shot, all these other things. But it had nothing to do with Batman. It's about Batman came in Batman Begins and created a authoritarian fascist city in Gotham with the fall of the League of Shadows. They wanted to cleanse Gotham, literally using fear gas and, you know, in general, and Batman put a stop to them. But then what did Batman do? He literally did the same thing. He fucking wiped the streets with most criminals, making them all terrified. He was basically a fascist dictator without the rhetoric and the propaganda. And he was ruling by fear. So the only things that were left were the organized crime families. And even then, a lot of them were still pretty fucking terrified of Batman. And then the Joker comes in as the countermeasure to Batman's authoritarian bullshit. He balanced them out. And the Joker did a better job at cleaning up organized crime than Batman ever did. Because Joker was the reason that the conditions were made for the Dent Act and the things that happened in The Dark Knight. All of that was driven by the Joker. And the Joker doing what the Joker does best. But that is because DC doesn't give a shit about trying to make you like a character or trying to make you have a quotable, quippy line. If they happen to have good, quotable lines, that's an extra gold star. But they care more about making you think about shit. And they care more about making things that will make sense and actually have you thinking and concepts and making you want to talk with somebody. And like, again, think back before Infinity War happened. So if you go Black Panther and earlier in Marvel films, the only films of Marvels that you can actually have a civilized normal discussion that is like kind of deep is about Winter Soldier, which is talking about the ideas of the helicarriers and whether or not, again, it brings up the topic of things like vigilantism and whether or not you can have a helicarrier that reads, as a quote from Nick Fury, reads a terrorist's DNA before he's come out of his spider hole and executes them beforehand. And to quote Cap, you're going to hold a gun to the world and call it freedom. That's a that's a civil discussion starter right there. That conversation of talking about freedom versus security, it's a huge social studies topic that could easily be discussed. Captain America Civil War, same type of thing. Should the Avengers be responsible for all of the chaos and the damages that get caused when they're trying to save either the world or they're trying to save just other people when chaotic things like the Shatari coming in or Ultron trying to take over? When those things happen, should the Avengers be responsible for the aftermath damage of saving the world? Like, what is more important, them saving the world and being, and from a potentially worse fate under either Ultron or under the alien Shataris, or them, like, if they don't save the world, that is the world that you live in now. Ultron's taken over, or this happens. But if they save the world, and then you're going to hold them accountable for destruction that either they did cause because they were, fighting, or destruction that was caused by Ultron or caused by the Shatari. Like, why is that inherently their fault? I don't know. But that's the discussion that they bring up. But those two films are both Captain America films, but yet they're not about Captain America. They're doing what DC does in those films. And then Black Panther is the last example of a good discussion starter film. And why? It's not because it's Black Panther. It's not because of Black Panther as a character. It's because of the conversation that Killmonger starts when he's talking about the fact that Wakanda is this developed nation that's hiding. It's more developed than any first world country in the world, and yet it's hiding and making it easier for things like racism and oppression to happen to literally everybody because they're deciding to hide and hoard their wealth and hoard their resources from the rest of the world and hide it, especially considering they're on a continent that's so full of poverty and considered to be the third world. Those are the only conversation starters that happened before Thanos. But if you think about it, what is the first superhero film that you can think of that was having somebody that you were actually like, huh, this person has a point that I agree with? Like a conversation starter. I'm willing to bet you that it was probably, highly likely, the Joker in 2008 on The Dark Knight. Now, granted, there are lots of superhero films that came before that, like the Spider-Man trilogy by Sam Raimi and the original X-Men trilogy, where differing characters had differing points as well. You get characters like Magneto, who is a great villain, Sir Ian McKellen, I love you. And then you get characters in Sam Raimi's trilogy. Doc Ock has some points and different things like that. Those are true as well, but they're not as big conversation starters. Professor, or not Professor Xavier, I mean, he's part of it. Him and Magneto, they kind of have some form of conversation starter stuff. But to be fair, they have a little bit of an advantage over literally every character, literally ever, because Professor Xavier and Magneto as characters in the comics are literally made to be representations of Martin Luther King Jr. and Malcolm X. And mutants are stand-ins for every form of civil rights movement that has ever happened, whether it was for women, black people, gay people, trans people, any form of people that have had civil rights movements and movements to get rights for themselves. Mutants and the X-Men comics and series have basically been a stand-in for you since almost ever, since they pretty much came out. So like they kind of have that advantage going for them. And again, they were, you know, one of the first real superhero films that was actually like started being more developed and big budget. Whereas, you know, films from like the 80s where you had like 80s and 90s where you had like the Superman films, like really bad ones, and like Batman and Robin and like, you know, those types of films, like they're not great. They don't really have conversation starter stuff. Like even Batman 89 where everyone's like Jack Nicholson's Joker's amazing. Like that film is so good. It's okay. I'm on record probably somewhere else on the internet. I'm not a huge fan of Jack Nicholson's Joker, and I didn't really like Batman 89. Mostly because Jack Nicholson's Joker isn't the Joker. It's Jack Nicholson wearing Joker makeup and being Jack Nicholson. Kind of got off the point there, but the point that he's just saying is like the goal of a superhero film is to make you like the hero. In DC's world and in DC's mind, no, the fuck it isn't. Man of Steel is if you were a is the idea. So first we're gonna go Man of Steel, then obviously Batman. But well, we'll go through most of the DC. But this is the real premise behind the DCEU as it happened when it came out. So I'm gonna get to another point about Marvel versus DC in a second here. This is I was looking at it earlier, but so Christopher Nolan's trilogy came out, and The Dark Knight Rises came out. I believe it was either 2011 or 2012, and Man of Steel came out in 2013. We had no knowledge prior to Batman v Superman, aside from whispers just before Batman v Superman, whether or not Christian Bale was going to be coming back as Batman for a universe or what was going to happen with Nolan's Batman related stuff. And the reason that that matters is something list of movie. Oh, not Control R. List of. So we're gonna look at something real quick here. I have a question here for reasons I don't know why. Okay. So this is a full list of DC films. This is a full. So we're gonna look at both. We're gonna look at live action. So we're gonna go based off of the start of the Marvel Cinematic Universe, and we're gonna go off of Christopher Nolan's trilogy and onward, because that's when cinematic universes started becoming a thing, right? And trilogies and things like that. Obviously, if you're looking here, we have, you know, Superman and all that, right? So we have Superman from the 70s and 80s. Those were bad. We don't want to talk about it. So the first film that we're going to look at, we have Batman Begins, which is the Christopher Nolan, and it literally says here reboot. Because, you know, we have all of these really bad Batman movies. We got Batman Begins. I mean, Constantine is also in there, but Constantine, as far as I'm aware, has never been interlinked to any part of anything. I'm just gonna read what you said here, Open Heart. Yeah, exactly. Marvel makes their characters come across as somehow perfect, even though they do terrible shit like murder people all the fucking time. And DC characters are real potential humans. They come across as actually like relatable in a different way. You relate to Marvel characters and Marvel heroes because they're what you want to be and how you imagine that you could become. Again, Spider-Man is about this could have happened to anybody and you could have became Spider-Man. But most people, as much as everyone's like, I would love to be Batman, or I think being Batman would be cool, that's not going to happen to literally anybody. You know why? Because most people are never going to be rich enough to be Batman. That's the truth of it. Plus, most of us can't keep a secret like. But so back to these lists. So Batman Begins comes out in 2005. Okay, The Dark Knight comes out in 2008, and then we're going back over here. The first film in the Marvel Cinematic Universe is technically Iron Man and the Incredible Hulk. They also came out in 2008. Okay? Now, pay attention to that. These two films come out in 2008, but technically they're made by completely different people, right? You have this one is Paramount, this one is Universal Pictures. Now, go from The Dark Knight and Watchmen comes out. We have our boy Zack Snyder works on Watchmen. Jonah Hex, Green Lantern, Dark Knight Rises, Man of Steel. Cool. Perfectly fine, right? We're talking about DC films. But as far as we know, right, the Dark Knight trilogy is I don't even think most of us knew that it was a trilogy until we got the third film, and then it's like, oh cool, it's a trilogy. And then after that we didn't really know anything, right? And there's been discussions, especially with the Snyder Cut, is Green Lantern going to be in the Snyder Cut? In the original cut that we got, the Justice League, the Joss Whedon version, we had a Green Lantern, but it's not Ryan Reynolds. And I don't think that Ryan Reynolds is in the Snyder Cut. I'm honestly not sure. But that's not the point, right? We didn't know that there was going to be a DC cinematic universe until we got Batman. Well, we were getting like the illusions and the whole like, hey, there's gonna be a Batman versus Superman movie, and everyone was like, yeah, right, and then it happened. But 2008 is when The Dark Knight comes out, and then we got 2012 when The Dark Knight Rises comes out, and 2013. So if we go and compare and talk about going from The Dark Knight all the way to Justice League in 2017, you have just under a decade. And in total, DC based films make 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 films. Okay? How many of those are actually in the DCEU? 3. Man of Steel, Batman v Superman, Justice League, and then if you're talking about like the full universe, you have Suicide Squad and Wonder Woman. You have 5. Okay? And after that, you have Aquaman, Shazam, all that stuff. Cool? We're going from the start of the universes till until Justice League comes. You have 5 in the DCEU if you include every film that's actually in the DCU from start till Justice League. Cool? You go to Marvel from the start of the universe in Iron Man. You include these, even if you include these as 1, you get 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, and if you include Black Panther because it's just before Infinity War, 17. Which basically is akin to them making a film every single year since 2000, but they didn't even do that. They started in 2008. And that's if you're including Iron Man and Hulk as one movie, because they both started it at the same time. You realize how nuts that is. They made 17 films in between 2008 and just into 2018. Black Panther came out in February. It even says there, it's the 18th film. That's in 2018. And they started in 2008. In 10 years, they came out with almost double the amount of films as the years that they were making them. Whereas DC only came out with 5 for their cinematic universe. Like, and here's the other thing, right? If you're really looking at it, again, I call this the Snyder Trilogy because it's basically a Snyder Trilogy. You got Man of Steel, BVS, and his version of Justice League. That's the only trilogy that you're getting in literally all of DC. If you're looking at all of DC since ever, there's a Superman trilogy. Actually, it's 4 movies throughout here, and then you get Superman Returns way down here for reasons. And then you get these 4 films, but none of these are actually like connected. I'm pretty sure only 2 of them even share the same actors, if I remember correctly. Because yeah, you get 2 that are done by Tim Burton. That's it. And then Batman Forever was a different one too, wasn't it? Yeah, this is Joel Schumacher, and then this one is fucking also Joel Schumacher. I don't like those films enough. But like you get those, and then you get Nolan's trilogy, and then you get Snyder's trilogy. That's it. And those are for 2 characters, Superman and Batman. But you go here, if you're looking at all of Marvel, there's been 1,000 trillion versions of Spider-Man. There's been 1,000 trillion versions of X-Men. There's been 1,000 trillion versions of the Fantastic Four. There's been Captain America. There's been Thor. There's been Iron Man. There's been the Avengers. There's been Guardians. You know, like Deadpool's on the road to getting his 3rd film, probably. Like Ant-Man almost has his own fucking trilogy at this point. Like that's how weird this is. So like that is where we're at, is that Marvel has made more films because they had more people, and that's why you consider it a lot more of a cohesive narrative and a more cohesive everything, because they have 17, 18 films that came out in the span of 10 years. Versus DC, yes, they were making films since 2008. Got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Sorry, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, and if you include Aquaman in 2018, 11. 11 compared to 18 is nuts. It's absolutely insane. Like, and you also got to think that every single one of these films is like 2 hours plus, right? So it's like fucking wild. And so that's the big thing here, is that people aren't understanding is Snyder's trilogy is about this, okay? And this is probably where we're gonna end this video and streaming, because I don't really have anything else that I really want to talk about after this. Because as much as this video is like the rest of this here, and I could nitpick, and this video is all here, I don't really need to, because I've made all the points I need to. Is that Snyder's films are about, if you had access to the DC logs or like all of DC, right? And you can make films about all of it. Snyder's films are what would happen if you took Batman and Wonder Woman and like all of the people that he has in Justice League, right? If you were able to take all of those things and you were actually able to make films for them, this is what the world would probably realistically look like. Because Man of Steel is what would happen. It was what would highly likely happen if Superman was real. He crash landed, grew up on a farm, had a family that raised him how he's raised in the film that you see. That is probably how it would go. We don't really humans don't really react well to change in general. And if we found out that there was an alien that was as overpowered and strong as Superman, we would fucking lose our shit. Okay? And then Batman v Superman is what would happen is if you also remembered that Batman also exists in this world, and you have Old Man Batman from like the Dark Knight Rises comic series, where he actually has to fight Superman. Which, by the way, is an almost perfect example. Like, they almost have shot for shot things in Batman v Superman compared to the Dark Knight Rises comic series. Is it the Dark Knight Rises or the Dark Knight Returns? I'm pretty sure it's Returns. I'm sorry if I messed it up. I probably did. But you guys know exactly which one I'm talking about. Like, they almost have shot for shot things from that comic in Snyder's movies. And to say that Snyder doesn't understand the characters and Snyder doesn't know is fucking mental. The thing is Batman, everyone's like, "Oh, Batman never uses guns." Batman used guns for a long time. Batman's murdered lots of people. Batman in Snyder's movies is like Thomas Wayne Batman in the Flashpoint universe. He kills people all the time. He uses guns. He doesn't give a fuck. Or he's Old Man Batman, who also just doesn't give a fuck and is done trying to fucking put up with shit. And realistically, in most of the films, he only uses guns on people he knows can take bullets and pretty much be fine. Or in dream sequences, like nightmare sequences. He doesn't actually shoot and kill almost anybody. And literally in the most iconic scene where he's doing that insane fight, he's utilizing somebody else, like he's manipulating their arm and they are shooting, but he actually doesn't shoot anybody. He's basically utilizing that as a fear tactic to make people duck down and controlling space, which is actually a great fighting technique if you're actually in that scenario. Yes, Batman does a lot of things where you're like, yeah, no, he totally just murdered somebody. Like when he hurls that big ass crate at that dude, yeah, that dude's probably dead. Like, or like very, 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 very quadriplegic. Like he probably has severe damage to the head and probably neck, and he's probably super fucked. But like that's the other thing. Zack Snyder took a lot of time and effort to set up that this Batman is aggressive. He doesn't give a shit. He's old, he's tired, and he's had to deal with a lot of shit. And I'm pretty certain from the trailer that we got for Snyder's cut of Justice League, I'm pretty sure we're going to see some stuff from his earlier career and some of his earlier career interactions with Jared Leto's Joker, which, by the way, I'm so excited for Jared Leto's Joker to come back. He's one of my favorites. Hate me all you want. He's one of the most accurate to the comics, if you want to talk about comic accuracy. But, like, I think we're going to see some of that, and that's what's going to set up the dumb shit that people don't like the damaged tattoo and the grills and shit, is that we're genuinely just going to see Ben Affleck's Batman literally probably, like, we might either see it, knowing Zack Snyder will probably see it at some point, or we'll get allusions to it, or, you know, we're just already, we already filled in these blanks anyways, that Ben Affleck's Batman, like, after Joker killed Jason Todd, took him aside and beat the motherfucker's teeth in for real and, like, broke the fuck out of him. And the reason he has damage tattooed on his head is to fuck with Batman. It's not to be an edgelord and look all fucking, oh, hot topic, hot, and all that. Jared Leto's just naturally really attractive looking, okay? He's fucking sculpted by the gods. I don't know what to tell you, okay? He has that to antagonize Batman. Think about all of his tattoos. All of Jared Leto's Joker's tattoos are usually fall into one of two categories. Joker's vanity, to try and be like, haha, I'm the Joker, I'm fucking amazing. Or to fuck with Batman. Literally, he has the Robin tattoo with a like arrow or a knife through it. Fucks with Batman. The hand tattoo of the smile is to be a smile to replace the broken, shattered up, grill filled smile that Batman beat the fuck in. The gesture tattoo, Joker vanity. All the ha ha ha's, Joker vanity. Literally, the dude has his own name tattooed on him. Would the Joker do that? I've seen lots of people say no. I know for a fact that he would. The Joker is super vain. He would do dumb shit like that all the time. Joker's so fucking wild, and that's why I love him. Why I love Jared Leto's is like he's actually genuinely the most accurate to the comics, to the animated series, to other mediums that has ever come out. He's the only one who's done like the whole death fake out thing where like he's in the helicopter crash and then he comes back later and everyone's like, oh, he was supposed to be dead. I mean, it didn't surprise anybody when he wasn't, but that's because that's what the Joker does. That is accurate to the Joker. God, I hate how people like are just like trying to jump on bandwagons. But like that's the thing. Is now Jared Leto's Joker is literally making Joker history. He's the only person and he's the first to be in 2 live action films. 2 live action anything for Joker. Aside from Cameron Monaghan in Gotham playing 2 different Jokers in the same show. But I just see that as one continuation because it's the same show instead of 2 completely separate things. Because Jared Leto was in Suicide Squad, which was done by Dave Ayer, and he was in now Snyder Cut. And he also looks different and acts different. Also, I'm calling it now. This is February 23rd. I'm saying it now. Whoever makes high up executive decisions, whether it's at Warner Brothers or wherever, they're going to be watching the numbers for the Snyder Cut, seeing how it performs, seeing what happens with it. If it does really well, like if it performs really well, if it does what they want it to do, one of 2 things is going to happen. They're going to either, if it doesn't perform well enough, they're going to consider the Snyder Cut to be the last shot or the last ditch effort that was made at reigniting the DCEU, and they'll move on and reboot the series, reboot the characters. But if it does really, really, really well, Warner Brothers and whoever controls them or whatever will be pulling out all their idea boards again and all their paycheck, like all their checkbooks and stuff, that probably try and re-entertain all the film ideas that were being discussed back when before Justice League came out, the first one, like the Affleck Leto Batman Joker movie, or Leto's solo Joker movie, or another Superman movie, whatever the case may be. They're probably going to re-entertain doing all of those films if it goes really, really well. I would also like to say that I highly, highly think that if Snyder's Cut does really, really well, depending on timing, they might actually try and go and release David Ayer's cut of Suicide Squad, which will also tell you and show you just how much better Jared Leto's Joker is as well. Just to keep building on the fact that everybody who was like, Jared Leto sucked as Joker is super wrong. And if I end up being wrong, I will eat my hat, but I still think that he's one of the most comic accurate just from his portrayal in Suicide. Let's talk about it. Hashtag about it. I've been ranting and rambling about DC Comics and the Snyderverse a lot, but that's the entirety of the premise, is that the entirety of what happens in the Snyderverse and in everything that you've seen in the DCEU is basically what would really happen in the context of everything that happens. Aquaman is this weird sort of solo effort that's like, it happens after Justice League, so it's weird, but like everything in every single one of the films in the DCEU makes sense if you take it into the consideration of what would happen if Superman was real in the real world. Everything that happens in Man of Steel would probably happen the way that it did, maybe not the amount of destruction or whatever. Batman v Superman would probably happen given the same circumstances, and if Batman was real in that universe, and then if Batman if Superman died, something like Suicide Squad, it totally happened. Maybe not that specific threat, maybe this, maybe that, but all of those things, if you're taking into consideration of the events of what would happen if these characters and the idea behind the metahumans and all of these things behind DC were real, that's all you need to do for your suspension of disbelief. And then from there, utilize whatever knowledge is given to you, as opposed to just being like, well, it doesn't do this story from this comic book, or it doesn't do this, so therefore it's bad. So the Dark Knight didn't do anything from any comic that you can easily discern. It's still great. Joker didn't do anything discernible from any specific comic. It's still really good. Logan didn't do it. Most of the best superhero films that you will ever enjoy and ever have enjoyed usually aren't entirely original ideas, but they're usually not very closely based on a comic. And that's for a reason. Because the medium of comics and the medium of cinema are very different. They are not going to ever be very good at going one to one. Just like trying to tell a video game into a movie, those also aren't meant to do one to ones. Why most video game movies have sucked, and some of the better ones aren't very good still, because it's really hard to try and take something that involves player choices and things like that and turn it into a movie where there is no interaction with what you, the audience, want. You know, that's my point. Is that I understand why people dislike these things. Like again, the whole Martha scene, given the context, like I kind of understand, but it also is really stupid. Like just being like, aha, we have the same name for our moms. We should stop fighting now. Is dumb, but if you're taking it out of the fact of like our moms share the same name and more to the point of like Batman is realizing um how much of Batman's characterization within Batman v Superman and even into Justice League is about the fact that he slowly starts to realize that Superman lived a far more human life than he originally gave him credit for. And that's because of the fact that Batman is probably one of the most unrelatable characters based on the fact that he is so unobtainable for real humans. Nobody's ever going to be Bruce Wayne level rich. Literally, think of the richest person that you can think of that's a real human being. They're probably still not as rich as Bruce Wayne. And even if they are as rich as Bruce Wayne, they aren't able to do the Batman life because Bruce Wayne was that level of rich way younger than almost anybody else. Except for like maybe Mark Zuckerberg, but like Mark Zuckerberg sure as fuck ain't gonna be getting proper fit and like working out and doing CrossFit and being able to, stop criminals. The dude can barely handle titties on his fucking platform. What do you want? I doubt he'll be able to fucking do anything in relation to, fighting crime. So like, don't at me. Also, Mark Zuckerberg, don't zuck me. I'll zuck you right back. um, yeah, we went way off track there. But like, that's the point. Is Batman realizes that Superman is a far more human person, and he also like Batman's whole aspiration and goal to become the Batman in the first place was to stop what happened to him from happening to other people. He doesn't want anyone else to have to go through the same bullshit experience that he went through, which is about the main thing that is actually relatable about Batman and what that, and because his suit and his brain are awesome. But I don't know like how else to tell everybody who watches this video or is watching this stream live, but like I understand that it's different because you, especially when you like grew up watching Marvel films since we were all kids. Like I'm pretty sure the first Blade movie came out before a lot of us were born, or like just after we were born, and like that's one of the first superhero films. Like some of the first films that I ever remember watching as a kid were superhero films like Blade, um, Crow, which is different entity entirely. We're not going to talk about the Crow. That's a way too long of a derailment. But like the Crow, um, I had bad parents, so I ended up watching films like The Punisher as well, which were way too violent for very tiny me. But like those films, Sam Raimi Spider-Man movies, like different things like that. Like we grew up watching a lot of Marvel films or Marvel character-based films. So I understand why people like them, and I understand why films like Snyder's that are very big departures from that are considered not necessarily just inherently terrible or something like that, but like not as good by comparison. I understand, but I vehemently, I don't think I used that word right, but I'm hoping I did. I disagree, and I've explained why in this probably 2 hour long thing, hour and a half. Cool, like that's where we're at. So, yeah, that's gonna be the end of the video. And then we're gonna stream some Among Us. So for everybody watching on YouTube, thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to like, comment, share, subscribe, all that stuff. Hit me up on twitter.com. If you weren't here for the VOD or for the stream, follow me on Twitch, twitch.tv/Notorious Morpheus. Thank you. Bye.